Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Cletus Ogbodo. I'm from the University of Texas at Paso. Since that we have more validation today. We're talking about validation just as my brother did. So I work with Dr. Rosa Fitzgerald in Special Research Laboratory. And the title of my talk this afternoon is on the use of high frequency radar data from two important estuaries of Texas. The Sabine estuary, otherwise called Sabine and Galveston, to validate the SCHISM model. And the parameter of interest here is surface current. So, in making this presentation, I intend to follow this outline. As I mentioned, our state, Texas, is or has a lot of interconnected water body as a result of our proximity to the ocean. And these water bodies have several agencies that manage the resources. They usually use models, to characterize those environments and as well to make decisions on how to manage the resources. But some of these models are limited in scale, and there is need to validate the ones that are presently used, because when they validate a model, it gives a layer of trust to these managers to base their decisions on the model. By validation, I mean comparing what the model gives from observation. So, as I mentioned before, some of these models are limited in scale in the sense that they don't traverse a very large length from the creeks to the ocean scale. However, the SCHISM model, SCHISM which stands for Semi-Implicit Cross-Scale Hydroscience Integrated System Model, which is heralded as the next gem of the coastal hydrodynamic model, have proven to perform very well in a very large scale, including creek to ocean scale, not forgetting the estuary and the pair element. As well, the SCHISM model has demonstrated that it has the capability of resolving the complex terrain of the estuarine environment. And that is why we are applying this model in this project. Why does the estuarine environment matter? Someone might ask. They are the most productive environment, productive ecosystem, and very sensitive to different forcing. Any change on the environment of the estuary will easily reflect on the structure. So scientists leverage on that in order to monitor what is happening at this surface. And when we monitor what is happening in the estuarine environment, we usually use high-frequency radar, among other instruments, in order to monitor what happens at this estuarine environment. And when we do that, the parameter of interest is usually the surface current, as I mentioned initially. What is this surface current? Surface current is simply a mass movement of water in a specified direction, right? So when water moves, especially at 45 degrees to the wind that is causing the water, that's what we refer to as what? As a surface current. And why do we need this? Why do we need to care about surface current? This movement carries information about floating objects, submerged objects, sometimes pollutants, especially oil that accidentally spilled on this environment, as well as surface current even influences regional climates and temperature. So as such, they play a very important role in both ecology, climatology, and even in the economy. So as I mentioned, that we have two important estuaries of Texas where this project is based on. Why do we choose these two particular study areas? Apart from the fact that they provide a recreational activity, they provide a source of economic gain, economic return to the state of Texas, providing job as well as source of farming activities. Aside that, this estuarine environment I mentioned have high refinery traffic because of their proximity to petrochemical industry. And as a result of that, there are a lot of oil spills, substance spills that happen. But the Houston Chronicle reported that in Galveston Bay alone, about 10 to 14 oil spills occur in a year. And as such, it's very important that we monitor what happens in that environment. Also, with respect to security, Sabine Lake is one of the largest military offload. Actually, it's the largest military offload in the US. So that also shows the significance of having a look at taking a proper monitoring of this extramarine environment. So in our project, what is our objective? What do we need to achieve? Simply, we need to implement the SCHISM model in order to generate surface current. Okay, and we deploy high frequency radar at the same time to give us the same surface current. We have the observation, we have that produced by the model. We compare the two. Simple, as simple as that. And we intend to do that by generating a computational grid of unstructured triangular quadrilateral element to represent the bathymetry and the topography of Galveston Bay and Sabine Lake. Using the relevant software, software I'm going to use here is the surface water modeling software. And because we are solving a numerical, we are basing our solution on a numerical method. The solution requires that we compute the variable that we are looking for at every discrete point along the bathymetry of either Galveston Bay or Sabine Lake. And in this case, the parameter of interest here is our what? Total velocity, that is the surface current. So we need to compute this at specific nodes, at specific free surface elevation, at specific time, at specific boundaries or element center, depending on the parameter we are looking for. So the second part of the project, which is the high frequency radar, requires us to deploy high frequency radar in pairs, because in order to have a full representation of the surface current of a particular area, high frequency radar usually deploy the word in pairs, so that we have a combination of the total radial component of the velocity to give us the surface current, the total velocity, the surface current of that area. And then the simple physics of a high frequency radar is based on the Bragg scattering, in the sense that when we send a wave from the radar, it gets to the surface of the extramarine environment and gets scattered in different directions. But there is one that is returned back to the radar that has a wavelength that is exactly half the wavelength transmitted by the radar. Okay, we apply that with the idea of Doppler shifting, and then we measure the frequency. But as if when the wave is moving away from the radar, as well as when it's coming towards the radar, then the difference is what we have as the total radial component. So the physics of SCHISM is simply based on the ever-present continuity equation and the momentum equation of incompressible fluid dynamics. So our SCHISM model is to solve these two equations in order to get the total velocity, which is the horizontal velocity in both x and y axis that we're interested in. As a way to show the projection of our project, we need to set up the model, which we have done successfully, generate the inputs, and then run the simulation. By running the simulation, we mean define a problem. In this case, we are interested in what? The total velocity, right? And before we do that, we need to what? Set up an initial condition. That is, what is the value of the, for example, the free surface elevation at time t equal to 0, and as well set up the what? The boundary condition. That is the tidal, for instance, the tidal depth of the tidal depth as we move the bathymetry of either the Galveston Bay or Sabine Lake with respect to time, which is as a function of time, right? So When we set up the boundary condition and the initial condition, then we run the model. We visualize the output. Usually the output is in the form of what? Net CDF. And then we extract the variable of interest, which is total surface current. At the same time, we are deploying the high frequency radar. We are also take account for the gap that usually occur in high frequency radar data, process the data, and then compare the output using the validation matrix of root mean square error, coefficient of efficiency, and then the ever-present index of agreement that is very common in hydrodynamic comparisons, aerodynamic comparisons. So what we have done so far is that, I didn't mention it earlier, but it's pertinent for me to mention here that we are still at the inception stage of this project. Yeah, what we have done so far is that we have compiled the model and have run a test run using input data that is not from a Paso. Fortunately, I wish we have a coast area around the Paso because it's actually hot over there. We don't have. So we have gotten our input data from Freeport that ranges from Freeport to around the Sabine in Texas. And we have run a test model using this input data. And this is the output we got from this, which shows us the simple idea is that we are on the right path. That is exactly what this output is telling us. We're on the right path to getting what we want. So this graph again illustrates that we're on the right path of getting what we want because we look at the horizontal velocity against time. From what I illustrated is simply the values we have from day one of the test run. I didn't mention it, that this test was actually carried out by the data, the input data we got from this Freeport to Sabine Lake on the ranging from the 1st of July to the 30th of July 2017. So from the first day to the last day, we could see that on the first day there is a little bit of change in the horizontal velocity with respect to time, but towards the last day, it's more uniform. Same with the elevation values as well with respect to time. Here, I just showed a pictorial representation of how the horizontal velocities are computed on various words, horizontal grids. Right, on the first day and on the last day. So, as I mentioned before, we are in the process of getting results. And we are expecting that our results will follow the trend of previous research that have been gotten in this area. However, Chu and his co-workers got a result using high frequency radar that are in situ, but our high frequency radar are deployed, are being deployed rather now to be on the land, not on the bed itself, but it's on the land overlooking the bed. Yes, I will conclude this presentation without thanking the funding agencies, which is the Texas General Land Office, for this that are funding this research, as well as our partner agencies, especially those at RATES, and then my research team. Probably before next time, we'll have the kind of result we so those who are interested in this research that we want before next forum. On this note, I say thank you to everyone for listening, and then I'm willing to entertain your comment question.
Thank you. Thank you, Cletus. It was great to hear a talk from a fellow modeler. Do we have any questions? I do. So Cletus, I've done some work recently on assessing HF radar surface velocities to very near surface drifters, looking at the very surface. There's a lot of shear, as you may know, right near the surface of the ocean. So when comparing HF radar velocities to models, you have to look at the depth of your uppermost grid cell. You know, you're using it looks like a terrain following coordinates.
Yes.
So the grid cells can vary. What is the typical depth of your topmost grid cell in your domain or over the region of the HF radar footprint? Because you mentioned this HF radar, it's about 1 to 2 meters deep.
Yeah, in the slide I
Yeah,
mentioned.
so what is the thickness of your upper grid cell typically
Of my,
in your model?
the model, about 3 meters.
How much?
3 meters.
3 meters, okay, so comparable in scale.
Yes.
Okay. I'd love to talk with you more about it. I'll
Sure,
post
I'll
it
be
down
happy to.
find the modeling poster down there. Do we have any other questions? Thank you so much, please.
All right.